Intro scene. The cameras roll, the audience buzzes with anticipation, and the stage lights shine brightly. The set of The Nightly Roundtable gleams with its signature modern design, blending deep blues and golds, reflecting the prestige of the popular talk show. At the center of the grand setup sits its host, a man renowned for his biting sarcasm and left-leaning rhetoric, Ethan Cole. Tonight, however, something is different. Across from him, sitting calmly and composed, is Karoline Leavitt. Young, sharp, and unapologetically conservative, she radiates confidence. She has walked into the lion's den before, but this time she knows the battle ahead will be particularly intense. The audience is filled with a mix of skeptical liberals and a few scattered conservatives waiting to see how this night will unfold. The tension is palpable, but Karoline remains unshaken. The exchange begins. Ethan leans back in his chair, flashing a smirk. Karoline, welcome to the show. I have to say, you're quite the controversial figure. You seem to thrive on stirring. The pot. Karoline tilts her head slightly, unfazed. It's good to be here, Ethan. And I wouldn't say I stir the pot. I just speak the truth, even when it makes some people uncomfortable. Ethan chuckles, shaking his head. The truth, you say? That's an interesting way to put it. You've made some pretty bold claims in the past. Some would say, outrageous. Karoline's lips curl into a knowing smile. Outrageous? Or simply inconvenient for certain narratives? The audience murmurs. Ethan shifts in his chair, but his smirk remains intact. He leans forward. All right, let's start with this. You've been a strong supporter of Donald Trump, a man who, let's be honest, has been a divisive figure to say the least. Karoline nods. Divisive only because the media made him that way. He fought for working Americans, strengthened the economy, and prioritized American interests. That's not divisive. It's leadership. Ethan lets out a short laugh. Leadership? You mean the same leadership that saw him impeached twice? Karoline doesn't miss a beat. Impeached by a highly partisan Congress on baseless charges. Both times he was acquitted. If we're going by that logic, Joe Biden's corruption scandals should have the media in a frenzy, but we both know they conveniently ignore those. The audience gasps. Some clap, while others boo. Ethan raises his eyebrows. Ah, so now we're playing the whataboutism game. Karoline shakes her head. It's not whataboutism, Ethan. It's holding everyone to the same standard, something mainstream media refuses to do. The host gets personal. Ethan sighs, acting as if he's dealing with a stubborn child. Karoline, I get it. You're a rising star in the conservative world. But don't you ever feel, I don't know, embarrassed? You're defending a movement that's been called regressive, anti-progress, even dangerous. Karoline's eyes sharpen. Embarrassed? Not at all. I stand for free speech, secure borders, lower taxes, and an America First approach. If that's dangerous to you, then maybe your definition of progress is the real problem. The crowd erupts, some in cheers, others in jeers. Ethan raises a hand to quiet them. He smirks again, but this time there's a flicker of frustration behind his eyes. You talk about free speech, he says, but conservatives are always complaining about being canceled. Isn't that just playing the victim? Karoline leans forward, her voice unwavering. Ethan, when people are fired, banned from platforms, and silenced for having the wrong opinion, that's not playing the victim. That's fighting against actual oppression. If free speech only protects one side, it's not free speech at all. Ethan opens his mouth to respond, but Karoline cuts in. And let's be real, who gets canceled more? A liberal celebrity who says something offensive? Or a conservative commentator who simply states biological facts? The audience murmurs again. Ethan's face twitches slightly. The turning point. Realizing he's not winning this debate, Ethan shifts gears. He leans back and folds his arms. All right, let's talk policy. You advocate for stronger borders, correct? Karoline nods. Absolutely. Ethan scoffs. Even when it means separating families? Even when it means denying asylum to people fleeing dangerous countries? Karoline doesn't hesitate. I believe in legal immigration. I believe in securing our nation from human trafficking, drug smuggling, and crime. And let's be honest, many so-called asylum seekers are exploiting the system. Meanwhile, people who follow the legal process are pushed aside. Ethan raises an eyebrow. So you have no sympathy for these people? Karoline's expression hardens. I have sympathy for American citizens first, the homeless veterans sleeping on our streets, the families struggling to afford groceries, the working-class Americans left behind by bad policies. Shouldn't our government prioritize them before anyone else? The audience reacts, some with applause, others shouting in protest. Ethan's smirk falters. He adjusts his tie, trying to regain control. Let's talk about women's rights. Karoline lifts an eyebrow. Let's. Ethan grins. You're pro-life, correct? Karoline nods. Yes, I believe in protecting the unborn. Ethan leans in. So you think a woman shouldn't have the right to choose? Karoline meets his gaze steadily. I think an unborn child deserves a right to live. The left loves to talk about bodily autonomy. But what about the baby's body? Who speaks for them? The audience is in an uproar now. Some are on their feet clapping, others shouting angrily. Ethan's jaw tightens. The host loses control. He exhales sharply, his frustration barely concealed. You know what, Karoline? You sit here with your rehearsed talking points, your smug self-righteousness, and act like you have all the answers. But let me tell you something. Your views are outdated. The world is moving forward and your kind is being left behind. A hushed silence falls over the crowd. Ethan's tone has shifted from sarcastic to openly hostile. He's no longer debating, he's attacking. Karoline, however, remains calm. She smiles slightly. If standing for faith, family, and freedom is outdated, then I'm proud to be. And if my kind is being left behind, why do millions of Americans agree with me? Why does your network work overtime to silence people like me? If conservatives were truly irrelevant, you wouldn't be so desperate to shut us up. Ethan opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. The audience watches in stunned silence. The aftermath. A long pause stretches between them. Ethan shifts, uncomfortably. For the first time in his career, he has nothing to say. The camera zooms in on Karoline, her expression unwavering. Then, she leans forward and delivers the final blow. America isn't stupid, Ethan. They see through the media's lies, and that's why your side is losing. With that, she leans back in her chair, crosses her legs, and smiles. The show cuts to an emergency commercial break, but the damage is done. The clip of the exchange spreads like wildfire. Within hours, it dominates social media, trending nationwide. Some praise Karoline for her composure and truth-telling. Others rage against her, calling for boycotts. But one thing is certain: backstage fallout. The studio is buzzing with chaos as the commercial break drags on. Ethan Cole rips off his earpiece, his frustration boiling over. His producers whisper frantically into their headsets, scrambling to regain control. Karoline Leavitt, however, remains composed. She sips from her water bottle, watching the scene unfold with quiet amusement. A stagehand hesitantly approaches her. Miss Leavitt, would you like to continue the interview after the break? She smirks. I don't think Ethan does. Ethan, pacing near his desk, overhears her and whirls around. Oh, don't flatter yourself, he snaps. This isn't over. Karoline raises an eyebrow. Really? Because it sure looks like you're struggling to recover from that last segment. Ethan clenches his jaw. He knows she's right. The audience reaction, the trending hashtags already flooding social media. It's clear she's won this round. And he's not used to losing. His producer, a frazzled woman named Lisa, rushes over, her clipboard pressed against her chest. Ethan, we need to decide. Do we continue with her, or do we pivot to the next guest? Ethan's mind races. If he cuts the interview short, it'll look like he's backing down, but if he keeps going, Karoline might continue dismantling him on live television. Either way, he's cornered. Lisa lowers her voice. We're already getting calls from executives. Some are saying this is a disaster, others are saying it's gold. The ratings are through the roof. Ethan exhales sharply. Fine, we finish. It. Lisa nods and signals the crew. Back in 10 seconds. Round 2. Live again. The cameras roll. Ethan forces a smile. Welcome back. We're still here with Karoline Leavitt. Before the break, we had a lively discussion. Karoline chuckles. That's one way to put it. Ethan takes a deep breath, trying to regain control. Let's shift gears a little. You claim to stand for the average American, yet you support policies that many say harm them. Tax cuts for the wealthy, deregulation that favors big corporations. How do you justify that? Karoline doesn't hesitate. Ethan, let's be honest. Big government harms the middle class more than anything. When taxes go up, it's not the billionaires who suffer. It's small business owners, working families, and entrepreneurs trying to build something. Lower taxes and fewer regulations mean more jobs, better wages, and economic growth. Ethan scoffs. So you're saying billionaires should pay less? Karoline shakes her head. I'm saying the government shouldn't punish success. The real question is, where do all these tax dollars go? Because they're not helping the working class. They're funding bureaucrats, wasteful programs, and foreign aid while Americans struggle. A few members of the audience clap. Ethan forces another smirk. That's a nice soundbite, but the reality is, trickle-down economics doesn't work. Karoline shrugs. Neither does socialism, yet that's what your side keeps pushing. The audience erupts again, half cheering, half booing. Ethan's smirk falters. He rubs his temples, realizing he's losing control once more. The final blow. Ethan leans in, voice dripping with sarcasm. You know, Karoline, for someone so young, you talk as if you have all the answers. But tell me, what makes you qualified to speak on these issues? You've never held office. You've never had to make real policy decisions. So why should anyone take you seriously? Karoline leans in too, her gaze steady. Because I listen to the people who actually matter, hard-working Americans. I don't sit in an ivory tower making empty promises like career politicians. I fight for everyday citizens who are tired of being lied to by the media and the political elite. That's why they take me seriously. Ethan opens his mouth, but no words come out. Silence. The audience watches, waiting for his response. But he has none. Karoline smiles. And judging by your silence, I think America just got their answer. The aftermath. The show ends abruptly. As soon as the cameras cut off, Ethan storms off stage, muttering curses under his breath. His producers don't even try to stop him. They know this episode will go down as one of the most viral moments in talk show history, but not in the way Ethan wanted. Karoline stands, calmly shaking hands with staff members before heading toward the exit. Reporters already flood her, phone with requests for interviews. She knows this moment will be talked about for weeks, maybe longer. Outside, supporters and protesters alike gather, chanting her name or shouting against her. But she isn't fazed. She's used to it. As she steps into a black SUV, her phone dings, a text from an unknown number. You just changed the game. America is watching. She smiles, leans back, and watches as the city lights blur past. She had walked into the lion's den, and she had walked out victorious. The viral explosion. By the time Karoline Leavitt's SUV pulls away from the studio, the internet is already on fire. The exchange between her and Ethan Cole is everywhere. Clips are circulating on social media, news outlets are scrambling to cover it, and both sides of the political spectrum are reacting in full force. Twitter trends include Dr. Karoline destroys Ethan, Leavitt wins, and, from the opposing side, Ethan was right, though the engagement overwhelmingly favors Karoline. Conservative. Commentators celebrate her performance, calling it a masterclass in handling media bias. Liberal figures, on the other hand, are scrambling to spin the narrative, calling her responses scripted, dangerous, or misleading. The full interview hits YouTube, racking up millions of views in just hours. The comment section is a battlefield, supporters praising Karoline's composure and arguments, while critics desperately try to discredit her. As she scrolls through the reactions on her phone, another notification pops up, an invitation from Tucker Carlson for an exclusive sit-down interview. She smirks. Game on. Ethan Cole's backlash. Meanwhile, inside the sleek, glass-covered headquarters of Ethan Cole's network, chaos reigns. The higher-ups are in damage control mode. Producers debate whether Ethan should address what happened, apologize, or double down. Ethan, sitting in his dressing room, scrolls through his phone in horror. The clips circulating are not in his favor. Headlines are brutal. Karoline Leavitt leaves Ethan Cole speechless. The Daily Wire, liberal talk show host, crumbles under pressure. Breitbart. Ethan Cole gets a reality check on. Live TV. Fox News. Even some of his usual supporters are calling him out. His own audience, left-leaning progressives, are questioning why he let Karoline dominate the conversation. His pride stings. He had built his brand on being the sharp, no-nonsense host who could outwit conservatives. But tonight, he had been outmatched. A producer knocks on his door. Ethan, we need to do damage control. Maybe release a statement? He rubs his forehead. No, I'll go live on my podcast. I'll spin this. But deep down, he knows the truth. Karoline had won, and there was nothing he could do about it. Karoline's next move. By the next morning, Karoline's phone won't stop buzzing. Offers pour in, from conservative media outlets, political organizations, and even grassroots movements. She appears on Tucker Carlson's show that evening. The moment her face appears on the screen, the energy is electric. Tucker leans forward. Karoline, you walked into one of the most hostile environments possible, and you didn't just survive, you dominated. How did you stay so composed? Karoline smiles. Because I knew the truth was on my side, and I knew Ethan would rely on cheap shots instead of real arguments. When you're prepared, their tactics don't work. Tucker nods. Do you think this moment will shift the narrative? Karoline sits up straighter. I think it already has. Americans are tired of media manipulation. They're waking up. And if this interview proved anything, it's that the left doesn't have a monopoly on the conversation anymore. The establishment panics. Behind closed doors, Democratic strategists and media executives panic. The viral moment isn't just a minor controversy. It's a sign of a larger shift. Young conservatives like Karoline aren't just surviving in media spaces, they're winning. A closed-door meeting at a major news network is tense. A senior executive slams his hand on the table. We can't let this happen again. We underestimated her. A younger producer speaks up hesitantly. Maybe we should bring her on again and control the narrative better. The executive scoffs. Absolutely not. She already humiliated one of our biggest hosts. Another round could be even worse. The message is clear. Karoline is too much of a threat. They won't give her another opportunity to do this again. Grassroots movement. Outside the mainstream, something bigger is happening. Karoline's supporters rally behind her. Young conservatives, often drowned out by mainstream media, feel empowered. College students begin sharing clips of her debate, inspiring a surge of confidence in those who once felt silenced. Conservative organizations reach out, eager to collaborate. Donations to grassroots political efforts skyrocket. Social media influencers who once stayed neutral now speak out, emboldened by Karoline's victory. A movement is forming. And Karoline? She's just getting started. Final scene. Karoline sits in a quiet coffee shop the next morning, scrolling through the news. A notification pops up, an invitation to speak at a massive conservative rally. She exhales, takes a sip of her coffee, and smiles. The battle for America's future isn't just happening in Washington. It's happening everywhere. And after last night, the country knows exactly who Karoline Leavitt is.